Hey, and we're live and with Jason Cohen, CEO of Mission Control NOC. How you doing?
What's going on, Kevin?
Oh, so backstage, I said, occasionally I pander to guests, and so I had to move over my Canadian flag over, make it visible. So there you go. Now it's
I'm just
official.
glad that you have it.
Yes, absolutely. Well, it's cool. We were backstage talking about, I don't know. I don't know if Canadians get tired of this, but but probably one of the more common talking points is hockey. And we were just talking about we're both involved. I guess I'm old guy now, but I try to get on the ice at least once, twice a week, and then I got a kid at U16 level, and you've been involved in hockey your whole life as well, right?
Yep, played hockey as a kid. Still play today. I'm on the ice twice a week in a men's, call it a men's beer league, but it's still a league. Um,
Yeah.
my kids play hockey. I coached them since they were like 6 and 7 years old, and so hockey. I guess I'm that stereotypical Canadian. Hockey's definitely a part.
Absolutely. We probably end up talking about this, the entire podcast, but I know. I guess say one thing. I'm fortunate that the league I play in is in the morning, um, over at the Naval Academy. And there's another facility called Piney Orchard down the street, but I try to do the evening men's league, but those start times are 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, and then you get off the ice, and by the time you wind down, it's 2:30, and then you're back up at 5:36, and that's tough. So you're doing that, man. God bless you. That's awesome.
You're almost describing my night tonight. My game is at 8 p.m.,
Uh,
which is a relatively it's a really good
that's
time.
a
But
that's a good slot. Yeah.
But by the time you're off, it's 9. Showered upstairs. The bar is 10.
Yeah.
Having your food and drink because you're gonna do that most of the time.
Yeah.
Go home, get the brain zoned out. And
Yeah.
the 5 a.m. alarm goes off. So
Yep. All right. Cool. All right. So I'm not the only one, but
for the love
no,
of the
that's
game,
awesome. That's awesome. So so let's kind of get kind of background, man. You've got we'll get into business because I'm pretty fascinated by what you're doing there. But I guess are you a native? Are you native from Toronto, or where are you from?
yeah, I'm one of those weird, like I'm third generation Canadian, which those are rare.
Oh.
I'm born in Toronto. My family's born in Toronto. Uh, like my kids, my wife is not from here, but even my parents were born in Montreal, and their parents were born in Montreal. So when I was born in Toronto, they moved to Toronto and then had me. We ended up. I grew up a Leafs fan. My father was a Habs fan, so you can imagine that hockey battle going on. And of course, anytime I go visit the family over there, um, over family dinners and such with the cousins, it'd be those kind of Leafs versus Canadians battles. But
Yeah.
no, I'm from Toronto. I mean, I live right now a 15-minute drive from where I grew up. Um, very much the classic Canadian guy, I guess.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. So what were the so you're talking about your parents being from Montreal and then kind of migrating south in the Toronto area. I guess early days, was there a technology disposition, or what was the genesis behind getting in the tech industry in general?
Yeah, at my 13th birthday, my grandparents from Montreal, they gave me and my cousin and I are 2 days apart in age. And they gave us for our 13th birthdays, they gave us each our first computers.
Huh.
And I don't know why, but I just really took to it. They kept saying, you need a computer because computers are the future. And my parents endorsed that message. And, you know, I nerded up right away, and um, I've endorsed technology ever since. But I was that geeky kid, and got into computer games and understanding the operating system early, and just kind of took it from there. But it was forever since I was 13.
Oh wow! Did you ever get into like deconstructing, or tearing them down, rebuilding, or building your own computers, anything like that?
Well, I mean, computer parts were extremely expensive back then, and
Mm.
obviously, as a team, don't have any money. So that came later, I think, with the hardware. I
Mhm.
think early on, it was dealing with DOS and
Uh,
your Windows 3.1s, and you're just understanding how to do things within the operating system, or things that the native UI wouldn't let you do. Like I said, I geeked up, or I nerded up, and just kind of learned things. It helped that I had a couple of friends who were into similar things, and so we teach each other how to do things. I still today, like without the concept of Google, I really don't understand how we learned as much as we did by just playing around. But it was amazing what we were able to do, and later became the family computer geek or computer tech or whatever, and I guess I still am today.
Yeah, apparently so. Yeah, we'll get into that momentarily. But so the early days, you're probably after school playing hockey, and then gets dark out, get home, start working on the computer, what have you. But did you carry that through your education? Did you go was that part of matriculation or college or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean the parents aren't going to like the message I give out there, but first of all, it was roller hockey on the street after school. It was ice hockey practices and games on the weekends.
There you go.
And certainly we were rollerblade hockey, like the entire street got involved until it was dark, and then it was come in and make sure your homework's done and have dinner. And but the technology part of it, if there was a keyboarding was an optional class in high school. I took it, obviously. I did little side extra projects for the school to earn extra credits. That was like build a computer lab, was helping the school to build their lab. So I did stuff like that. We did a charity event that was like toss the old computer stuff out the window and into a dumpster, and people paid like $5 to throw stuff out. So got involved with that. But the reason the parents aren't going to like the message is in college I did a 3-year program for computer engineering, which had an extremely low graduation rate. It was in our area anyway. It was the local program to take if you were really into that stuff and you wanted that respect, because that program in that school was really well respected. And it came also with the opportunity to earn certifications as well as the diploma and degree when we were done. And I finished it on time. I had great marks. I came out of there with stars above my head. Everything was great. And I use none of it. I'd say next to none of it today. That's the message the parents aren't going to like to give to the kids. But the truth is I did see it all the way through, right? It was elementary, high, college, and done. And even certifications, I did a few after that. But like the amount that I used from college, it just doesn't apply to what I do today.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, I think that's legitimate. I think it's legitimate because I think a lot of people, especially today, are struggling with the overall value of a college degree. And I know certainly here in the States, there's, it's more noisy than it's ever been, on the value of an actual college degree, relative to, whether you're going to like a specific discipline, like becoming a lawyer or a doctor or whatever. So, I don't think that's too sacrilege. I think a lot of people, kind of looking at that now, is that really the path that you need to go? Yeah.
Well, truth is, and I mean, we have this discussion. Happy to have this discussion, because the truth is, whenever we would get resumes in, if I was ever the one doing the interviews and the hiring, and I did a lot of that over my years, I always looked for experience over education. Mm-hmm. Always. Right. Yeah. It was, I mean, the education was great, but there's a real difference between book smarts and experience. And I always looked for the experience first. People would sometimes ask me, what certifications do I need? And I'll be like, you need experience. So if the certifications get you the experience, fine, but I want the experience more over than anything else.
Yeah. No, that's so smart. I think a lot of people, make that mistake of it's, you have to have, specific degree. You have to have, you have to check the box. Relative to experience and just general personality and aptitude, the ability to learn, and the desire to want to be involved and learn, and in whatever capacity within the business. So yeah, I agree with 100%. It's I think it's more instinctual versus looking at checking the box whether you graduated from a specific degree. And so I think we agree there 100%. Yeah. All right, so you went through kind of got that college, the technical degree, check the box, and then what was next? Where'd you go? What was that first gig out of school?
Well, if we're going way back, I mean, we're not talking the job as the dishwasher in a kitchen, which I did.
Oh hell yeah, let's do that.
Oh yeah, my first job, I was 14. Ended up I worked concessions at a movie theater at 15, 16. And then I ended up getting, I had started already doing kind of odd jobs here and there in IT. I did get a job working at an ISP. It was a dial-up ISP at the time, doing tech support for them. And then in my last semester of high school, so I guess that would have made me somewhere between 17 and 18, I registered as a sole proprietorship my original, what would become my MSP. So let's call it my break fix IT service company back in the day. So that was 17, 18, I registered that business. And it originally was friends, family, and then they would tell their friends and families, and eventually became, really small businesses and other businesses that people involved with. They really just tried to help. These might have been people just on my street that were my neighbors. I played hockey with their kids or whatever,
Yeah.
That later turned into a corporation, which became a proper break fix IT company. It was just me for a long time. And then, referrals happened and more referrals happened, and spent a little bit of money on marketing and advertising and things like the yellow pages. Remember those things? And,
absolutely.
Other things, and knocking on some business doors, did that too. That became a managed service business in 2010. But before that, it was the old classic way of break, fix, call me when you need me. Hourly work blocks of hours came later. There weren't even many tools. It was more, just reactive IT.
Yeah.
And then 2010, we turned into a managed service company.
So what was the impetus, at 17, 18 to go out and start your own business? I mean, was there entrepreneurship, or were there role models in the past, or was it just like, hey, this seems like a pretty cool thing to do?
I guess. I mean, my grandparents, they had their own business in Montreal. My father was a musician, but he ran his own band orchestra for his business. So I guess I'd seen it exposed in various different ways. My uncle in Montreal had his own business as a travel agency. So there were a few. My other uncle in Montreal moved to Vancouver. He was self-employed for a long time. So I guess that was just what I saw. But I also always felt like the owner of the business can always be the one to make more and have more opportunity and more freedom. It's just what I saw in their lifestyles. So I thought that was the way to go. What did I know? 17, 18, but it just seemed like the way to go. Tried it. When you're 17, 18, it's easier to gamble with that, but you know so little, right?
Yeah.
The amount of things you discover the hard way, but that's okay. It makes you harder for it, I think.
So what do you think was more, well, I think I know the answer to this based on kind of previous comments, but what was more valuable? What do you think was more of an education or degree? Kind of the technical degree, or just jumping?
You knew the answer before you asked the question, but it's not even close.
Yeah.
Like, it's not even close. It's not even close.
Yeah. So
every little detail that would come into the experiences of a business owner, from banking, insurance, taxes, legal, employees. I could talk for hours. So could you. Being an employer, and the employment came later, right? Like I said, it was just me for a while doing that was the way, going under the desks. But you learn so much about people and about business and about a lot about life that way that textbooks aren't going to teach you, I don't think.
What was the earliest pivot point? What do you think was one of the most, pivotal moments early on for you? I mean, because, again, jumping in 2 feet, starting a business, either passively or actively, right, at that age is pretty special, right? But can you remember kind of moments where you're like, holy crap, I've created something, or this is crazy, or any kind of early memories or any experiences that were like profound?
I remember somebody, I forget what they said to me, but it's something that triggered me, and I didn't sleep much that evening because I kept thinking about, it was something to do with backups. And I still kind of relate to it today, because the amount of responsibility that an IT service company or an MSP has in terms of protecting their client data and cybersecurity. I mean, that really wasn't a thing back then. You're just talking about backups. You're talking about being able to keep the data safe in case a hard drive fails or a RAID blows up or whatever, right?
Right.
Now you've got a lot more options and tools and monitors and things, but you also have a lot more attack threats. But back then it was just, you're responsible for that company entirely. Millions and millions of dollars in some cases. If you lose their data, it's your fault. Oh my God. You know what I mean? So it wasn't so much an experience of something that we did where I was sort of like, okay, well, I've built. It wasn't about building. I think that came later. I think when I started to employ people, even my first guy, I was really proud of that. When I got my first client that was, not a few machines, it was several, it was like in the 20s and 30s and 50s. When you get one of those, like, wow, like I'm doing something, it's real. But I think one of those profound lessons I learned was about the responsibility and ownership of what we're actually doing. Just because the impact of that business, if you screw up or if some technology you're using screws up and you're not all over it, it's so just having that in the back of my mind, I've always kept that.
Yeah. That's a lot of pressure, early days, you're young. I don't know exactly how far into you're developing that company that was, but that's a lot of pressure.
20s, I think it was early 20s.
Okay.
Because again, at that point I was servicing businesses, not just individuals. Later on, I think in my mid 20s, I stopped servicing the individuals and just focused on business. But it was when I was servicing those companies, and they were real businesses, and you understood that they were in. It didn't matter if they were in insurance or engineering or manufacturing or legal or whatever. If you lost it, anyways, I took it to heart. And I think, it's a lot of pressure, but I also think that's the reality of it. And if you don't take it that seriously, then you're doing something wrong as the owner.
Yeah. I've had so many conversations with business owners, CEOs that have started. They were technical, right? They'd gone down a technical, path, whether they, they got an engineering degree or they were that young kid tearing, apart a machine and rebuilding it or trying to build their own or whatever, try to find components to build their own. And it's interesting because that's not often a great mix when starting a business. Having a technical disposition, being very technical versus, being able to, as you had to go out and hustle. You had to sell and become a sales and marketing expert just as much as a service delivery expert, especially early on when you're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people. So, I mean, were you aware as you were starting to build, a reputation and you're starting to build a business, were you aware of that kind of, divide or the need to learn how to sell effectively and be just effective as you are at managing a customer?
First of all, I agree. I think, we both service the MSP community, and there are a lot of them that start off, they're very, very technically sound. They're strong-minded with the IT side of things, not necessarily with the business side of things, and they got to learn that. One of the things that was, I can tell you, hugely beneficial for me was my wife at the time was in real estate, residential real estate. And she's still the smartest person I know. But she was always really, really good at evaluating property values and understanding real estate as a business and able to guide people on smart decisions, things like that. She's smart person. She was never really good at getting customers, understanding how to get somebody to list their home with them or to buy a home with her. That wasn't her strength. But once they were a client, she was magnificent. Yeah. And so she asked me if I would help. And at the time, I had more time. So I ended up taking real estate courses. I got my real estate license. And the only reason that I did that was really to help her. But I ended up, while I was doing that, I was taking a whole bunch of real estate mentoring and coaching courses that were all focused on sales. And I ended up listening to like the top real estate sales coaches. And then the top, I transitioned to listening to car sales coaches and just various industries. And I would listen. I drive in my car. I pop my CD into the CD player, and I'd listen to it for hours as I was driving, because I was always driving on site to clients. That was what I did. So in between those, I just get addicted to listening to sales material, and you learn techniques on how to sell and how to present and how to speak and how to, matching and mirroring and NLP and all these other things that I guess it was an amazing business learning. But again, I didn't learn that by fixing people's computers. I had to make the effort to learn that, because I was always good with people, and I'm the most honest person you'll ever meet, but I didn't have any sales experience, and I knew it would help both her business and my business. So I invested into learning that. It just helped. She was in the real estate business, so it also, provide an immediate benefit to her right away.
It's so funny you went down that path, because when I was younger, growing up, I had my mother was in real estate. My brother, he was the youngest person I think he worked for Remax, youngest person to sell $10 million in real estate. And I remember him early on playing Tony Robbins, I think Tom Hopkins, like the legendary, well, Tony Robbins was more, broader than real estate, but I think Tom Hopkins was like the early, like, it was like maybe mid 80s, late 80s, like sales guru. But I remember, going around and sometimes I'd help him pass out flyers, but he too, I think at that time he had cassette tapes, pre-CD, and he'd pop them in, and I would sit in the car and listen to him, or listen to this while he's, getting ready for his next meeting. So he's 10 years older than me. So I had the benefit of watching him. And I think the other kind of memory was that, early days when I was selling door-to-door telecommunications, like one of those jobs where people didn't want you in their office and they're going to kick you out as fast as they could. And so I remember, listening to some of these CDs at that time, and trying to get yourself pumped up for, going in and get your butt kicked when you're walking up and down the road trying to, sell telecommunications. But it's almost like you're forcing yourself, you're willing yourself to learn this stuff and get better at it. Because I too was, never really good at sales, but you had to, really force yourself to do this stuff. So that's cool that you went down that path. It's like so relatable, probably so relatable to so many out there, especially that getting yourself pumped up for that meeting, maybe either, putting on a sales CD or podcast, or listening to Guns N' Roses, getting yourself pumped up or something, right? Just for that next meeting. So very cool. Very cool. So this is awesome to hear. So you're starting to grow, you're starting to go, you got your first employee, you start to, get these kind of serious customers. And then, when was that next inflection point, in turning it into a serious MSP?
I'm going to redeem myself a little bit on my nerd status. So they were cassettes first, and I had them converted to CDs later on. Yeah, because changing those cassettes.
You're acceptable now. All right.
So 2010, that's when turned it into MSP. It was all about the proactive approach. And at that time, again, it was fairly new. MSP was only really a concept from 2007, 2008, 2009. So, and for me, it was, I was never I'm going to be the guinea pig of things. I'm going to see how things go. But managed services just continue to be a trend. And so I decided to change things. I really liked the proactive approach. And I became that very classic small MSP that, needed all the PSA, RMM documentation tools. We started getting clients with more larger businesses, so they would have server infrastructures and things. And, for a while, I was always the guy that would be taking those calls after hours for issues. And, the RMMs were now causing alerts to happen. I'm just like, okay, well, what's happening at 3 o'clock in the morning? And I'd always be the one that these execs would call if they had an after hours problem, because I didn't want to bother our team. So I took a lot of that on myself, and it became something where I started to look for a solution for myself, because I was still trying to grow the business. And certainly with, I can have more staff, but the after hours was never easy to cover. Nobody ever wanted to do it. And I frankly didn't want either. Vacations were tough to do. And I am a guy who likes to travel, and I like to sleep. So I ended up going out and looking for what MSP service offerings there were. And I can name drop. I mean, we came across, the truth is there weren't that many options, just as there are not that many options today for NOC or help desk for MSPs. The names have changed a bit, but there's still only a handful. Back then we spoke to Continuum. We became a customer of theirs. They were the first NOC company that we tried. Their help desk wasn't a fit, but we did try their NOC for a while, for about a year and a bit. We ended up working with Live Virtual Help Desk. They were with us for a year through our ConnectWise relationship, because at that time we were using ConnectWise for our RMM, and they had a relationship with them. We spoke to GMS about becoming a customer. It didn't work. We spoke to, anyways, the point was we tried the few that were out there in bays, and by the time it was around 2015 or so, we had tried the options. We had tried them, and they worked for a bit, and then they didn't, or they weren't a fit, and then we ran out of options. At the time, well, really ever since MSP, like we were always using Autotask as our PSA. And I'd gone, even though we had used ConnectWise for RMM, because Autotask didn't own an RMM at the time, which is how we got introduced to Live HD. But Autotask never had a recommendation for us for NOC or for help desk. So, we went out to try those few. And after a few that we had tried, we ended up in 2015 or so. And I contacted Autotask again. I would listen, I'm out of options. In the last couple of years, do you have any new options? They said, no, we don't. We just don't have it. And so we started to look into building it internally, but it ended up in conversation where I remember asking my sales rep at the time at Autotask, it was almost like a leap of faith question. I was like, do you think if you were to find a company that would do an Autotask exclusive help desk company and not company, that, you guys might be interested in having somebody to refer to if they ever wanted? And the guy's like, I don't know, I'll talk to my manager, maybe. And then he talked to his manager, and he talked to his manager. And between those three, I ended up having real conversations that turned into the Autotask Corporation taking a gamble and having a relationship with this new NOC and help desk company called Mission Control that was servicing the MSP community brand new. They tried it on their own MSP. So it was MSP built. It was built by people who understand the MSP industry. It was kept completely separate in terms of staff, access, ownership. So there wouldn't be any concerns for loyalty and to be exclusive to other MSPs. There wouldn't be any question about, taking clients or whatever. And eventually it turned into that. It turned into the Autotask, the world's only Autotask exclusive NOC and help desk company for MSPs. So that was really the next stage of things, was getting there.
Wow. So that again, kind of think about some of the commonalities on a lot of the episodes, is that it's often the MSP getting to a point where, look, there's got to be a better way, right? There's I've got to solve this problem, whether it's efficiency or it's for revenue, or the customer's asking it and no one else provides it. Those often become the genesis of great the next gen, or the great technologies. And that's cool to hear. That was the early days of the development. So let's maybe fast forward to today, right? So I guess tell us about kind of the platform, the capabilities. What helps you guys stand out, because again, you've got that classic MSP background, and you saw an opportunity and you built a pretty solid organization there. So let's get kind of today. Like let's hear about it.
Yeah, I would say still today, a lot of our higher ups are still, they're still from MSP life. They either came from another MSP or they've been in the MSP channel for quite a long time. We've always had a rule that still exists today, that only our senior level technicians, we only hire senior level techs that have worked for an MSP at some point in their career. That's a requirement for our senior level guys, unless they were a junior hired that grew through us.
Sure.
So the MSP experience is pretty large, and we've always thought that was really important, to be able to think like the MSP and behave like them and act like them and make decisions like them, because we understand it. It's different than our competition. We really stand out that way. I think that some of the things we always were different about. The integration was always huge for us, and we still work on developing integrations into additional PSAs and documentation systems and things, because we've always felt, and again, from the experience of being that MSP and using the services of what is now our competition, we learned what wasn't so great. Real-time visibility. We wanted to give the MSP absolute, true, and real-time visibility into everything that we do. Every status change, every time, every note, everything that we do, they see in their own tickets, in their own systems. They don't have to log into anything else. That's very important. Also, that their PSA be the source for everything, because unlike us just doing RMM alerts, tickets come from all different ways. They come from end users sending in emails, or technicians making the tickets for them, or other integrations. Now there's so many ways that a ticket can get made, and we don't limit ourselves in what we can do. We're very well known for our pick and choose, mix and match model, which really is unheard of today. Still, we're the only ones who do it, where an MSP is not forced to onboard everything. They're not forced to onboard every customer. They're not forced to onboard everything at a customer. They can literally choose the individual devices or circumstances, like time of day or ticket priorities or the way that they come in. They can decide everything about the relationship, which allows them to have flexibility to control their costs. We tend to end up being significantly less expensive when MSPs take advantage of that.
Yeah, that's to your point. That's still surprising to this day that so many in this space are, the prescriptive, not the right word, but they force you into, their platform, their structure, their tool set, and that, I think, in a lot of ways is obviously it's limiting, but then that becomes more challenging for that MSP, and it's probably even more challenging, to get to the point where they're starting to scale effectively, right? And I think the way you're doing it is you're giving them those options, kind of this plug and play and kind of pick, choose your own adventure type of model. It probably gives them a lot more comfort, or it gives them a lot more flexibility on the front end to get in and then start to scale. Is that a fair statement?
For sure. And the other part of it is us not forcing our tools on them because we don't sell tools, right?
Yeah.
Your very classic example, when we know what they are, they sell an RMM with their service. It's a requirement, right? So for us to say, as long as you have a PSA we can integrate with, and an RMM that integrates with that PSA, and a documentation system that integrates with those things, we'll use whatever you've already got. Even the integration is designed in such a way that we don't make the MSP change their structure to work with us. We work with what they have. What I mean by that is most of our partners, they use us for a portion of servicing their customers, not everything. 95% of our clients are taking advantage of that pick and choose, and they're saying just this customer, or just this customer after hours, or with the various scenarios. But that means that we're only servicing a portion of their business, not the majority. If that's true, we shouldn't be forcing them to change the way they work. We should be working within the way that they work, and that's really different about the way we approach things. So, but to your point, it makes it a lot easier on them for adoption, for getting started, especially, we do have a bunch of smaller MSPs. They're just not that mature in their processes, and in their tool stack, they're not that mature in the implementation of those things. So for us to go and dictate to them, I just don't think that's right.
Yeah, it's definitely challenging for the smaller ones that are just starting to figure it out, right? And they're not as sophisticated, and I think it's interesting, kind of looking at from a valuation from your standpoint, right? I mean, that's putting a lot of normal like valuation metrics and how you measure success of businesses, is everyone wants to force you into these annual contracts and standardize on a platform and stuff like that, and so in a sense you're taking a little bit more risk, right, in the way you're going to market. But I'm assuming in long term it pays off because of the flexibility and the fact that they can scale as it makes sense. You're not being prescriptive about you have to do these things. It's all or nothing kind of an approach. And so that's an interesting, and imagine you guys are again doing exceptionally well, very strong CSAT scores and what have you. But I guess that's a calculated decision you have to make early on. And so I guess what was the thought process behind that? Is it ultimately to give the MSP flexibility, and you guys over deliver and they'll stay and they'll scale?
So one of the other differences, and I'll come back to that because it all very much relates. One of the other things that also really separates us, and this will go right back to valuation, what you're talking about, but it's something we decided to do right from the get-go, was we have no annual contracts, and we have no onboarding fees. We have a way of taking a deposit upfront that pays for the last month on cancellation, and we also have certain rules around how long an MSP can stay that deposit applies. But that formula was such that, if for valuation purposes, you look at it and say, hang on, you guys are month to month and you don't force them to do all this stuff, your value is not what it needs to be, right? The concept of what we do being very much a partnership has to be that if we do well, they grow with us. Yeah. They have to be somewhat, I don't want to use the word dependent, but if we do a good job, they do become dependent, at least for the time that they're using us, on our service. Sure. But that also means that we're doing well. Like, it really does become a partnership. That enables them to grow because now they've got the time to do so. That enables them to scale. Their growth and scale is good for us because they're going to add more with us to be able to support what they're going to sell. And especially these days with the staffing and hiring problem, which is a global thing, as we know, right? Harder to find people. They cost more. There's less loyalty, and they tend not to be as good as they should be for that money. I've done a lot of webinars on the staffing issue over the last year and a half to 2 years. But with that all coupled in, especially when an MSP is either afraid to go after new business because they don't have the staff to support it, or they lose somebody that they were otherwise dependent on to support their existing clientele, which now they really can't go get more business. We give them a way to now scale and grow, which again, if we do that, then they scale and grow with us. So that's kind of the other side of it.
Yeah, no, I think that's brilliant. I think a lot of the industry is going to this model because I think it's proven long term that you deliver a good product, you create the loyalty, you create the dependency, but it's win-win, right? It's a relationship at that point. And there's a lot of studies around retention rates and reduced churn, but positive retention rates of 110, 115, 120% retention rates, with this type of model versus forcing people into contracts. And so definitely, I know that can be a contentious topic at times depending on what vendor you're working with. But I think giving the customer that choice and then building a relationship is absolutely the way to go. So you guys are proving that out. So what's next? I mean, you guys have been interesting period of time to evolve the organization, right? So you kind of started the front end, pre-COVID, right, where NOC and outsourcing and that was starting to become a thing, but then I'm assuming it accelerated significantly during COVID and now post-COVID, as you mentioned, where labor shortages and staffing costs are skyrocketing. But what's if you had to prognosticate or forecast, what do you guys look like in a year from now or 2 years from now?
So just speaking of that time, and I'm sure most MSP business owners will say the same, but just think of the volume. I will never forget the week that they sent everyone home.
Oh yeah.
Because the amount of work from home setups that we did in a 2 to 4 week period was, I'll just never forget it. It was astronomical. Yeah. But it furthered the need for the MSP and for us. We absolutely grew through COVID times. And work from home. I know, I don't know what it's like in certain areas of the United States. In Canada, it's very much a mixed bag. There are a lot of businesses that have not gone back in. There are a lot of businesses that have said come in a couple of days, but that still means they need to work from home. There's some that say I don't know of a single business that isn't either an enterprise or public sector that doesn't need some sort of work from home still as an option. Yeah. Right? They almost set it up as a backup in a lot of cases. So we're still continuing to support that even to today, which allows us to continue to grow. What's next for us? I mean, for us, this year was an exceptional year of growth. We did a lot of new integrations. Our latest was integrating into Halo PSA that got announced last month. So now we're with Autotask, ConnectWise, Kaseya BMS, Synchro MSP, and Halo. And so, what I consider to be your best in breed. We know what our next ones are going to be, the next two, and they're all mainstream. They're going to be big news when we do it. And the integrations are always built the same for that real-time visibility for everything, right? So that was big. We announced our cybersecurity response unit late last year, which was, if you think about a NOC ticket from an RMM alert, it's an alert, makes a ticket, some technician's got to solve it. When we talk about the SOC industry, the SOC tools are detecting amazing things and preventing all kinds of threat attacks. And 99% of the time, the SOC alert is not urgent. They make a ticket for the MSP to resolve. 1% of the time, it's critically urgent. They isolate the device. They call whoever the point of contact is. They make a ticket, and somebody's still got to resolve that. So we ended up creating an entire cyber response unit that's purely these cybersecurity specialists to be able to remediate cybersecurity events and alerts that come from SOC tools that we now integrate with. So that was big for us too. As you can imagine with cybersecurity, that's growing pretty quick.
Right. Yeah.
What else do we have going on? Yeah, I would say those are the two biggest news we have right now.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like it's keeping you guys busy for sure. Well, look, this has been a fascinating conversation. I'm sure, hopefully we get a chance to meet in person here at some point in the near future. We'll trade some hockey stories, some war stories, or whatever you want to call them. But what's the best way to get in touch with you or the organization? Out on the socials or direct on the website? What's the best way?
Yeah, any MSP that's looking for additional help, whether it be after hours, evenings, weekends, holidays, just daytime overflow, can be the servers, can be the end users, can be whatever you need. The whole idea is we want to be a white labeled 24/7, if you need it, technical extension of your technical team in servicing your clients. That's the message to the MSPs. We are www.missioncontrolnoc.com. As far as email goes, if you were to email launch@missioncontrolnoc.com or email Jason C, that's me. That email does work. It actually does go to me. But feel free to check out our website on what we do and the different services. The most important thing for any MSP who's considering this is let's talk strategy. What does it look like if you turn us on tomorrow? What do you want us to do? Do you want us to answer the phone and make tickets for your team? Do you want us to answer the phone and make tickets? But we'll do the ones that are for these clients and these hours and these priorities. You get to decide. Are we just watching the servers? Are we going to do a project for you, like an Exchange migration to Office 365, or Windows Server 2012 is end of life now, so we got to change those out. We do all sorts of things. Again, technical extension. That's what we do. So missioncontrolnoc.com.
Yeah, I love the flexibility, the approach. I really do. Well, again, thank you very much for joining me here, and we'll post all this stuff in the show notes, and appreciate it, and we'll see you out there. Either at an event or maybe on the ice at some point as well. So,
yeah, it was a ton of fun. I'd gladly skate with you any day.
Oh, good stuff, man. All right. I appreciate it.
All right. Be well. Thanks, everybody.
You too. Yep.